What's up guys, Acer Thorn here, and welcome to part 3 of my 4-part series on the ideal wrestling game. In the past 2 weeks, I discussed how the perfect wrestling game should handle the creation suite, as well as the story designer that I oh so want to see make a return, as well as how the ideal wrestling game should handle the universe, my career, and GM modes. However, one thing I have not touched upon yet is the actual wrestling aspect of a wrestling game. This is arguably the most important part of any wrestling game, since it is literally the name of the genre. Well, I have quite a lot to talk about regarding that mechanic, so much so, in fact, that both this week and next week will consist entirely of me talking about the match and promo mechanics of the game. So, since I've got a lot to cover, I might as well get started. WWE 2K17 introduced a promo system into the franchise. Previous installments had promos, but they were nothing more than glorified cutscenes. You were unable to interact with the promos in any way. 2K17 introduced a new mechanic to the game, using your own skill to cut good, exciting promos. Promos have historically made a wrestler's career, as well as completely buried those careers, both for the person cutting the promo and the person they were talking about. A single bad promo can end your career almost overnight and turn you into a laughingstock, while a single incredible promo can make you an overnight star, and be the sort of thing that fans will talk about for years to come. So, needless to say, having the ability to cut your own promos is a welcome addition to the immersion of the game. However, it also is important to remember that this promo engine needs to actually be intuitive and functional, otherwise it completely defeats its own purpose. In WWE 2K17, the promo system was a complete dumpster fire. I could never manage to get more than a couple thousand VC from my promos. I would select a dialogue option that I believed was consistent with my previous dialogue choices, only to get penalized for an inconsistent dialogue choice. It seems that the game designers had a very different idea about what counted as a consistent dialogue choice than I did. Furthermore, if I used the taunt feature instead of selecting a dialogue choice, whether I gained or lost points in my promos seemed to be completely random. That is not how promos should work. WWE 2K18 tightened this mechanic up quite a bit. Not only did I manage to get consistency bonuses easier, but also, if I used the taunt feature, it didn't randomly either give me points or take points away based on an RNG. Rather, it would actually remove 2 dialogue options for me. It's a lot easier to pick the better of 2 dialogue options than to have to choose between 4. However, 2K18's promo system still has a lot of room for improvement. For starters, every promo I do is always exactly the same. The promos I can cut should differ based on what story arc I'm in, as well as what kind of person my character is. You have a series of personality meters that grade how aggressive, honorable, etc. your character is. These traits should play into what my character says during a promo. I would also like to see more types of promos. Imagine a title celebration promo, which I can cut immediately after winning a title. In it, I hold my championship belt and I talk about what an honor it is to be champion. If I'm a heel, I can talk about how I proved all the idiot fans wrong and took this title as has always been my birthright. Alternatively, imagine an official contract signing promo, where there's a table and 2 chairs in the ring, with a clipboard on the table. Each wrestler has the chance to say his piece, and then there's an animation where they sign the contract while a third person looks on. Speaking of third persons, that's my next gripe. Promos currently can only consist of 2 people, and that is annoying. Let me have up to 5 men in the ring at one time. Imagine cutting a stable promo, where one guy holds the mic, and up to 4 people stand next to him and look tough. The guy holding the mic has the option to pass the mic to someone else. Imagine 2 tag teams cutting a promo against each other. Imagine 3 or 4 people in a 3-way or 4-way rivalry cutting promos against each other. I would also like to see 2 or more wrestlers talk to each other from different locations. Have one guy be in the ring and the other guy be on the stage. Have one guy in the ring and the other appear on the Titantron. Let me schedule a promo to take place backstage. Of course, in order for a brawl to break out, the wrestlers would have to be in the same location, but that bit shouldn't be too difficult for you to program, right? Also, we need the ability to have intergender promos. I understand why you don't want to have male-on-female violence, but that doesn't need to apply to intergender promos. We just need to disable the brawl feature, and intergender promos will be A-OK. That about does it for promos, but there is one final thing I would like to request that I mentioned in a previous episode. The ability to write my own dialogue for promos. Sure, I would like a full-blown story designer mode, but for simpler changes and simpler customization options that don't require full-blown custom cutscenes, a simpler mode with a simpler interface would allow me to write text for the dialogue boxes. That would be nice. In WWE 2K18, you issued a match editor for the first time in several years. However, this match editor was sorely lacking in the options that you were able to give. Look back at episode 1 of this series. Notice how much I praise the plus mods found on smacktalks.org for how much they provide near limitless customization options for matches. If they can do it, so can you. In WWE 2K19, for some weird reason, you actually took match customization options away. There is literally no reason to take the options away if they weren't completely broken. Rule of thumb number 3, people! Sometimes restrictions on match creation make sense. For example, a ladder match involving 3 or more teams contested under elimination rules. How would you even have such a match? Or how about a ladder or tables match where you can't leave the ring? How would you even get the ladders or tables you need to win the match? But then there are restrictions that make no sense. For example, if I have a 6-man or 8-man battle royal where you win by pinfall or submission, why can't I enable the ability to leave the ring? For that matter, why can't I turn off the elimination feature so that the first one to score a pinfall or submission wins? Why can't I set up a Royal Rumble where elimination occurs by pinfall or submission? Why can't I set up a Royal Rumble where only 2, 3, or 4 people can be in the ring at one time instead of 8 at a time, so as to make the aforementioned pinfall or submission elimination system easier to facilitate? Why can't I set up an 8-man elimination chamber match where 4 of the guys are already in the ring at the start? If I can create an Iron Man tables match, why can't I also create an Iron Man ladder match or an Iron Man last man standing match? So here's how I propose you fix it. First, give me the ability to assign my teams however I want. Any combination of teams, as long as no more than 8 people are in the ring at one time. Like I described in episode 1 of this series, when I talked about the plus mods, this could be any combination that is mathematically feasible. Next, give me a full range of win conditions. In 2K18, if I wanted the win condition to be to climb a ladder and grab an object, I had to start with a vanilla ladder match and tweak the rules from there. Instead, have grab the object be a win condition, and then let me place the object wherever I want in the ring or the ringside area. For example, if I place the object 6 feet above one of the turnbuckles, then I've essentially created an object on a pole match. Climb the turnbuckle to retrieve the object and you win. Or how about the win condition of place your opponent somewhere? The location you must place your opponent could be a section of the ringside area, thereby turning it into a casket match, or it could be in the entrance ramp, thereby making it effectively an ambulance match. Alternatively, all of the ringside area could be the place where you need to place your opponent, thereby turning it into an over-the-top rope battle royal. Alternatively, reaching the location yourself could be the win condition. For example, in a cage match, reaching the ringside area is how you win. In other words, you win by escaping the cage. Or perhaps there's a roof on the cage, and the goal is to reach that roof to claim victory, kind of like Impact Wrestling's old Terror Dome match. Last but not least, give me the option of having neutral parties in the matches I create. Examples of neutral parties can include special guest referees, special guest enforcers, and lumberjacks. Up to 6 lumberjacks, not managers but impartial lumberjacks. Creating this much freedom in our custom matches is entirely doable. You just have to program these options in for us. If the plus mods can do it, there's no reason why you can't. Okay, so let's do some brainstorming for a minute here. Let's suppose I want to create a strike-focused character. Specifically, I want a character who focuses almost all of his moves on different varieties of kicks. Spin kicks, low kicks, roundhouse kicks, listo kicks, super kicks, mule kicks, you name it. How am I supposed to do that? My wrestler's moveset has to consist equal parts strikes and grapples. While I can certainly make it so that my wrestler's strikes are all kicks, I still have to give him an equal amount of grapples. Sure, I can ensure that his grapples all have a heavy martial arts focused, but what if my envisioned wrestler isn't a mixed martial artist, but rather a pure striker? Under the current way movesets are created, I can't do that. Alternatively, what if the guy I want to create is a submission-focused character? His gimmick is that he can lock you in a submission hold from any position, even when he himself is prone. Ideally, I would want all my character's moves to be submissions, but I can't do that. Instead, only a handful of move slots are reserved for submission holds. Sure, I can set it up so that he has 4 different submission holds as his 2 in-ring signatures and 2 in-ring finishers, but I can't make his entire repertoire submissions even if I wanted to. This certainly isn't due to a lack of submission holds available in the game from each position. It's simply because the game arbitrarily restricts the number of moves of a certain category I can assign to my wrestlers. The current way the moveset is set up severely limits my ability to create the fictional characters I want to create. The source of this limitation is in the way the movesets have been created for the past 2 decades. One button does strikes and the other button does grapples, and you can't cross over. You cannot assign a strike to the A button, X on PlayStation, nor can you assign a grapple button to the X button or square on PlayStation. This restriction needs to go. Please remember rule of thumb number 2, minimize player restrictions. Unless you have a good reason to restrict a player's choices, don't restrict them. Let me assign whatever moves I want, strike or grapple, to either the left or bottom face buttons on the controller. Let me assign submission holds to any combination of left or bottom face buttons, rather than simply having the buttons held down. In addition to this, I would like to see more ground moves. Since the majority of my opponents spent the majority of their matches against me on the ground, yeah, we'll discuss that in a minute, I am often faced with a choice of repeating the same ground moves over and over again, or slowly and painstakingly using the wake-up taunt after nearly every standing move. Neither of these are very fun. Much like the standing moves, give me the ability to perform up to 10 different moves from each prone position. This means a move from pressing or holding down the left or bottom face buttons with or without the D-stick in one of 4 directions, and the moves should also differ depending on what position I'm in, e.g. whether I'm at the head, side, or legs, and whether my opponent is facing up or down. That almost does it for the changes I would like to see to the movesets. However, I have one final request to make. There are so many moves in this game that navigating them all can be a bit of a chore. I would greatly appreciate having a keyword search feature. So let's say I want a pile driver as my finisher. If I look in the P's or the standing moves, none of the moves apparently say pile driver. There are plenty of pile driver moves in the games, set out pile driver, stump puller pile driver, Texas pile driver, the list goes on and on. But none of them are listed in the P's, so finding the right one for my taste is a pain in the ass. However, if I had the ability to search for keywords, I could simply enter the word piledriver, and the game would instantly show me the moves that have the word piledriver in the name, making it a lot easier for me to find the piledriver of my choosing. In the wrestling games of yesteryear, you mashed buttons to escape pins and submissions, as well as to pick yourself up off the ground after you got knocked down. While this may seem crude, it is honestly the only way to recreate the feeling of being on the defensive. The return of button mashing is easily one of the most controversial requests that I plan on making in this entire series, but it's one I certainly feel strongly about. But then again, there is no reason why you can't simply make the button mashing optional. Remember rule of thumb number 2. With submission holds, you gave us the option of having the circle wedges minigame and the button mashing minigame, so why not give us the option of minigames for pinfalls as well? Admittedly, button mashing to kick out of pins requires very little skill on the part of the defensive wrestler. This is the primary argument for the button mashing not making a return, and it is certainly a valid argument. However, on the other hand, I would argue that it sucks 1,000 times more to be pinned for a 3 count less than a minute into the match simply because you suck at the timing needed to kick out of the pinfall minigame. If you insist on keeping this timing-based minigame, you should at the very least make it impossible for a heavily damaged opponent to kick out. As it currently stands, no matter how much damage is inflicted on a person, there appears to always be a hard-coded minimum amount of the wheel that is a sweet spot to kick out. Instead, if an opponent has sustained silver damage on one body part and a red limb damage in every other body part, the kick-out wheel should be completely devoid of any sweet spot for all 3 cycles, just like how it's devoid of a sweet spot on the first count if your opponent has just hit a finisher on you. While this may seem like a controversial request, I consider that to be the lesser of 2 evils compared to a player who is really skilled at just this one minigame, being completely immune to pinfalls despite being absolute trash at literally everything else in the game. If I beat my opponent to a bloody pulp in a completely one-sided affair for 20 minutes straight, he should stay down. If this were a real fight, he would be dead by that point. The ladder match is among the most popular specialty match types in wrestling today. They have stood the test of time, unlike the Hell in a Cell match, which used to be a big effing deal but has since been watered down to the point of being just another gimmick match. The ladder match still remains extremely popular. However, no video game, let alone any developed by 2K, have ever actually got the ladder match exactly right. WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role for the PlayStation and WWF No Mercy for the N64, both released in 2000, were the first wrestling game to have ladder matches. In those matches, however, the most annoying part about the ladder match was positioning the ladder directly underneath the damn title belt. The SmackDown vs. Raw series on the PS2 tightened up the ladder placement issue, but it also introduced its own problem. Once you reached the top of the ladder, you had to do a mini-game to actually take down the title belt. SmackDown vs. Raw opted for a mini-game where you slowly tilted the analog sticks until you found the sweet spot and held them in that position until the title belt's health bar went down. 2K has opted instead for a system where you put time a peg to go through a small hole in a circle. Both of these are completely immersion breaking. In the show these games are based off of, climbing the ladder itself is a struggle, especially if it's done late in the match when you have lots of damage, and taking the title belt down is the easy part. Well, unless you're Jack Swagger, but then again, reading is probably harder for him than it is for most people. Anyway, that is how I would like to see the ladder matches handled in the games. In WWE 2K19, you gave us a button mashing minigame to climb the wall of a steel cage. A similar minigame should be included to climb the ladder. You should have to repeatedly mash buttons to slowly climb up the ladder one rung at a time. Much like the second option, the submission minigame, the game should randomly alternate between the 4 face buttons and have you repeatedly mash those buttons to make progress towards climbing the ladder. The more damage your character has suffered, and the less stamina he has, the slower he should climb. That way, the climax of ladder matches would have you foolishly struggling up the ladder, just like in the climaxes of actual ladder matches we see on TV. But if you can manage to make it to the top of the ladder, it should only take you a few seconds to pull the title belt down. Don't pull it down immediately. You want there to be at least a little opportunity for your opponent to do a finisher off the top of the ladder, but there shouldn't be a minute-long attempt at taking down the briefcase or title belt. What, are you untying a knot up there? Just pull the damn thing down! The 2K games added the ability to have up to 3 managers at a time accompany you to ringside. This is a great addition. Having only one manager per wrestler was extremely limiting for the purposes of creating your own wrestling storylines and playing them out in-game. However, there is one slight problem when it comes to managers. Unless you're playing multiplayer, there is virtually no way to choreograph your manager's actions to coincide with yours. Let me give you an example. I just grabbed a weapon from under the ring, and I want to hit my opponent with it. However, the referee needs to be either distracted or out cold, otherwise I would get disqualified. My manager could distract the referee so I could use the weapon with impunity, but if my manager is AI controlled, there's no reliable way of getting her to do that at the time I need her to. Now imagine if I had the ability to temporarily take control of my manager by pressing down on the D-pad. Currently, the D-pad is used for taunts, but there are only 3 types of taunts you can do. Left for crowd taunts, right for opponent taunts, and up for wake-up taunts. This means that down on the D-pad is currently not being used for anything. If I could hold down on the D-pad, I could then give instructions to my manager the same as if I were playing as them. Down in combination with the left face button would distract the opponent for me. Down in combination with the R2 button would distract the referee. Down plus L1 would discreetly get a weapon for me, and so on and so forth. This would make it a lot easier for me to use managers to their full potential. Also, I would like to have the ability to have up to 3 managers at one time in single-player My Career mode. But not in online mode, as that could potentially unbalance the game unless you can find a way to rebalance it. Unfortunately, the list of game mechanics I want to discuss is simply too long for a single episode. So tune in next week and we'll wrap up this 4-part series by discussing the remainder of the game mechanics that should go into the ideal wrestling game. For the time being, however, if you enjoyed this discussion, be sure to like this video and share it with your friends. Also, check out some of my other discussion videos by clicking on the playlist icon you see in the bottom right corner of this video, and be sure to subscribe for more in-depth discussion and analysis of your favorite video games. Last but not least, check out some of my other Let's Plays on this channel, where I take a more lighthearted approach to these games and just have a good time. In the meantime, however, I am Acerthorn, and I will see you guys later.